What's up, everybody? My name is Andy Mells. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the content I'm about to go over. So basically what I'm going to share with you guys is the leveling path to create a sorcerer build that's focused mainly on just pure DPS for the sake of leveling. So you're going through, like, rushing through the story mode, rushing through dungeons, basically just trying to get to max level so you get to the end game portion. So I'm just going to, in the beginning of this video, I'm just going to go over the leveling path, just break down what you'll do at each level, and I'll have it in the description box below. And then after that section's done, I'll go into the interactions with the skills and what makes it so powerful. I know a lot of people just want to kind of just get to the level max, max out their characters, get what they need to, and then they can kind of theory craft in their own, which is, you know, a lot of the fun of these ARPGs. And people just want to know how to level to max just to get there and then figure it out. So like I said, this is just a leveling and the skill allocations all the way up to the max level, which I think is like level 50, and then there's 10 renown points allocations if I remember correctly, and I believe there's more points that you'll get allotted throughout the games with map completions and things like that. Anyways, let's get into it. So basically this build is just going to be predominantly electricity, because I mean electricity has a lot of crit potential and interactions like that. So the first 2 points are going to go into Arc Lash, which is not going to be your main ability for most of the game. Your main ability is pretty much going to be Chain Lightning. A lot of the synergies are going after that, excuse me, but you're going to do an Arc Lash, which is probably my least favorite skill to start with, or period, with the Sorcerer. It's really close range, but I can go into that in a different video. I'll have different other guides and different builds for sorcerers. But anyways, continuing on this one. So you do 2 levels here, and then 1 into your enhanced Arc Lash, and then you'll jump over here to your bread and butter, which is going to be the Chain Lightning. You're going to put 1 point into that by level 5. Level 5, or level 4, getting to this part and getting to level 5 is pretty easy in the beginning of the game. Then once you get there, you're going to do Enhanced Chain Lightning, and then you're going to Greater Chain Lightning, and that's going to be your bread and butter for pretty much the remainder of the early game, if you will. You're going to want to put Flickering Arc Lash. You're going to go back here and do that. Once you go over here, you're going to get Teleportation, or Teleport, excuse me, which is pretty much just used so you can create space, and if you get caught in a corner, just teleport away. As you go through enemies, you deal damage. And then another sustainability skill that you'll be getting is Ice Armor, which pretty much creates a barrier around you and has some different has some other effects that we'll get into later. And then you'll also get Frost Nova, which also is kind of just more DPS adding to your bar. All right, so if I remember correctly, you have 6 abilities at the bottom of your screen. So this last ability is pretty much just going to round out the end of your abilities that you can use actively, but will still be like allocating new skills that you can swap and trade with, depending on how you kind of like the build and where it's going. But we need to use skills so we get further down the skill tree. So that's the kind of section we're getting into. That being said, we're going to jump back to Chain Lightning, and we're going to put 2 here. Once we put 2 there, or excuse me, that's not Chain Lightning. Boop, boop. We're going to put 2 into Chain Lightning. Jump down here to Hydra. Hydra is a great conjure for Sorcerer. So I think it's like one of the best DPS, at least in the beta and the server slam. It was one of the best DPS conjures you can do at that time. It might change on full launch in a couple of days. You're going to go back up to Chain Lightning, your bread and butter. You're going to max that out. So now you have max Chain Lightning. And then you're going to come down here. Oh, excuse me. You're going to come back up here and get Fireball. Some people would like to get Fireball, and there's some traits that you can get for it to make it actually pretty strong. So you can kind of switch between your Chain Lightning and then your Fireball. But again, we're just trying to waste points so we can get further down in the chain, or in the skill tree. We're going to max out Glass Cannon, which is pretty much a guarantee for any sorcerer build that you're going to do, and that's going to be, you deal 18% increased damage, and then you take 9% more damage, but you know, you're a sorcerer, you should expect to be a glass cannon. Going from there, we're going to put some more points into Frost Novas. Again, more DPS stuff. So we're going to do Enhanced Frost Nova, and they're also going to do Mystical Frost Nova. Creates vulnerability. Vulnerability obviously allows you to do more DPS, etc., etc. We're going to go over to teleportation. What we're basically doing is we're trying to jump over a couple trees so we can get to the stuff that we actually want. So we're going to do enhanced teleportation, cooldown reduction, stuff like that, and then simmering teleportation. And then we're going to put 2 points more into teleportation. At this point, we will be down here. We just unlocked this area, so we're going to take away Hydra. And we're going to come down here to go to Inferno, which is a pretty big DPS ultimate, I believe this is. Yeah, so this is a pretty big ultimate, and that's why you're getting rid of Hydra, to put that skill here since we are already here. And then the next point you're going to do is Prime Infernal. It pulls in enemies to the center of it, so you deal more damage to them and keep them closer to you. So you could do some more DPS. You could probably turn on, you know, Frost Nova, things like that. All right, after we do that, we're going to go back up to teleportation, max that out, and then we're going to even go back up here to put another point into Arc Flash, 1 point into Fireball. Don't really understand that one. I guess we're just trying to throw away points into something. We're going to max out Arc Lash because we want to, you know, generate, you know, mana when everything's down, things like that. Come down to our Ice Armor again. We're going to enhance the Ice Armor. Again, we're getting to the end of the build for this leveling, so we're just trying to, you know, just round out our build, create more sustainability, create more DPS, you know, trying to get into those efficiencies of, you know, clearing out mobs when you're in the dungeons or in story, you know, in story mode dungeons and things like that. All right, so at this point, we've unlocked pretty much the passive. These are kind of like build makers, if you will. What we are looking for this one, and you can only pick one of these 6. You're going to go for this one, which close enemies take increased damage from your shock skills and deal 20% less damage to you. Critical strikes increase these bonuses by 25%, which is pretty big for something that's for a build that's mainly going off of shock skills and looking for those critical strike interactions. All right, now this is the fun stuff. Now we're getting a lot of passive things, and it might take me a while to find some of them because they're kind of spread out. So I think Devastation, yeah. So Devastation is one that you may be tempted to go early on in your build, but it really won't affect you, and it's better to kind of put your points somewhere else to get more DPS early on. So Devastation, you want to put 1 point into that. And then we mainly do that so we can get over here. So your core skills, which are these skills over here. So any of these skills, mainly your Chain Lightning, deal increased damage when you cast above 50 mana. So we're going to max that out. Obviously, that's something you want. And then we're going to go over to Fireball, put some skills into that. If you want to, you know, alternate between these two core skills, that's definitely a choice that you can do. And there's a lot of damage that you can put out if you want to go that route. And then we want to go to Align the Elements. Let me find it. Sorry. Align the Elements. We get that just so we can go over to Protection, which we'll put more into later. So using cooldown grants 10% of your maximum life as a barrier for 2 seconds, which is great. We'll be putting more points into that at the end of the build, so you'll get a barrier, creating more sustainability outside of your Ice Armor. I was going to say Frost Armor. We're going to go to Coursing Currents. Let me find that one. I think it's down here, actually. Here it is. We're going to just take one of these so we can get to Electrocution. So deal 5% less damage or enemies deal 5% less damage for 5 seconds after being critically struck by your shock skills. We're going to max that out. And then we'll go back to Coursing Currents, max that out as well. We're going to go over to Inner Flames if this is something you want to, I would suggest using it. Go into Inner Flames, max out Inner Flames. Go over to Icy Veil. This is obviously going to increase all the barriers that you get. Your barriers have 5% increased duration. Max that out. Again, this is pretty much getting into the end of it. And the last 2 skills that you'll get here is you'll go into Protection, again, to create more sustainability. And that will get you to the end game to let you, you know, just do whatever you want. Start farming for the real loot, for the real gear, the things that you want. And pretty much build around. There are core legendaries that you can get, or aspects, if you will, that you can get from dungeons and dungeons and random drops of equipment from bosses and things of that nature. The only one that I recommend you getting for this build, I guess for any kind of sorcerer build in the early game, is the recharging aspect. I don't know if there is a on this skill tree calculator, I don't know if there's a way to show it, but it's called the recharging aspect. I'll have a link in the description and where you can find it on the map, assuming they don't change the location of it. But the recharging, let me see if I can look it up. So recharging aspect is each time chain lightning bounces off you, you gain 4 to 6 mana, which is obviously something that you really want, since chain lightning is going to be your bread and butter. Anything that can generate more mana for you is great, because then you can spam more spells and deal more damage, more DPS, things of that nature. Another thing that I like to know is that at level 15 is when you start to really see big power spikes in your build. And at this point, you can keep it if you like the way that it feels, the way that it feels, or if you want to kind of rearrange it. I'll have other builds of builds that I've seen, or builds that I've tried out myself in the beta or the server slam. Hope you guys appreciated this portion of it. Now we're going to get into kind of the interactions and why this stuff kind of works. All right, so if you guys are out, peace out. Thank you for being here. Let's get into the other portion. So Arc Lash, again, this is something that I really don't like a lot, because early game it's pretty, it kind of encourages you to be close, and you're a sorcerer, you don't really want to be close to someone or anybody really. But you also have chances, to stun enemies and things of that nature. And then the way that we go here is that you're critically striking, and that's pretty much what you want with this build, to critically strike, because the more chances you can get critically strikes to proc, the more other things proc and create more damage for you guys, and more movement speed, so you can create that gap between you and enemies. Again, Fireball is just damage. I don't really like fire build in Diablo 4, and that's because a lot of these fire skills put burn on. I think this one has burning, so burning is what a lot of fire skills are reliant on, and burning is pretty much a damage over time or a dot. And it does, in a game like Diablo, you don't really want dots. You want to kill stuff as fast as you can, so you can continue on to the dungeon, or if you're in a world boss, you want to kill the world boss. You don't really want to be waiting for your damage to go over, especially if you're not someone who's tanky. Dots don't really work with someone who's a squishy, in my opinion. But the reason why you get Fireball is for the lucky hit chance. Lucky hit chances pretty much are... there's difference between lucky hit chance and a critical strike. Lucky hit chances, if they proc, they have their own different proc probabilities and properties that you can unlock, and you can make builds around it. So right here, so lucky hit, if you got this elemental attunement, lucky hit procs critical strikes, but it's not native. It doesn't just happen. Just because you get a lucky hit doesn't mean you'll get a critical strike. Again, they're two different properties, if you will. So it just kind of makes them work together. So lucky hit, critical strikes have up to 5% chance to reset cooldowns, which is a great for another build. But anyways, let's stay on topic. But again, besides that, it is good damage. Hurls a fireball, 84% damage to surrounding enemies. Let's look at chain lightning. Chain lightning, 25% for lucky hit. Unleashes a stream of lightning that deals 50% damage and chains between enemies up to 5 times, prioritizing enemies. But if it bounces off you, as we saw before, as I mentioned before with the aspect, if it bounces off you, you'll get some mana back, which is great. Chain lightning has gains a 3% increased critical strike chance per bounce, which is exactly what I was saying. We want that critical strike chance as high as we can, since this build is a lightning build, and that's pretty much what you're really trying to get that extra damage from. That's why this is a DPS leveling, like PvE. You're going into dungeons just spamming them just to get experience and things like that. If chain lightning bounces off you, its next hit deals increased damage. Again, we talked about this devastation. I wouldn't want to max this out in any build, because max mana increased by 3. I mean, let's look at the max. It actually goes up to 9. You get 9 more mana. There's equipment that's going to give you way more than that earlier on in the game. So you just get this to get to this. I wish they make this more enticing to actually mean something, but whatever. 3 mana is 3 mana. But you get it for this, and I mentioned it before, like I said, your core skills deal increased damage when cast above 50 mana. Teleportation, I briefly touched upon this. You have a lucky hit chance right there, 65%, which is great. But it's to create gap if you get cornered, or if you just want to go through some low-level enemies, you go through them, and you're unstoppable, and you deal damage to them as you go through them. Or surging to the target location, dealing 35% damage around you upon arrival. There you go. That's what I meant to say. Cooldown is decreased per enemy hit up to 3 seconds. After teleportation, you gain 30% damage reduction, which is great. Again, creating space. You get these abilities to increase survivability or sustainability, if you will. Damage reduction, and then reducing your cooldown, which is you want to spam that spell. This one is no-brainer, as I mentioned before. Glass Cannon. You are a Glass Cannon, so you would expect to get the trait called Glass Cannon. This is a must pretty much with any Sorcerer build. Ice Armor gives you Barrier as a squishy. You want this. It's better for you. The definition right there, a barrier of ice forms around you for 6 seconds, absorbing 30% of your base life and damage. While Ice Armor is activated, 5% of your damage dealt is added to its barrier. So more damage you do, gets added to the barrier, increases it so it doesn't break, and you're not getting hit by a boss or whatever. Another thing, always recommend, or any Sorcerer build, get this enhanced Ice Armor, because when you have Ice Armor active, and this is something you're going to want to spam pretty much anytime it's up, or if you're fighting big mobs, dungeon bosses, things like that, you get increased mana regeneration by 25%. Frost Novas, you just use it for extra damage early on in the game, early on in the build. I don't foresee you using this later on when you get Inferno. But it's up to you. But while you use it, you can killing enemies frozen by a Frost Nova reduces cooldown, so you just more cooldown, so you can use it faster. And then vulnerability, making an enemy vulnerable means you can do more damage, things like that. Remember how I said we're skipping a whole bunch of these trees early on in the game? Is because we're not really using this. I know we used Hydra for a little bit, but we lost it, so we can put it into Inferno. And we come back to these sections, if you will, just so we can get, additional max min stats. Again, we get to this just so we can go to this. I don't really like this ability by itself. You gain 1% damage reduction against elites for each second you haven't taken damage for them. I don't really like that, whatever. But again, you go up for this, which is protection. Using cooldown grants 30% of your maximum life as a barrier. So you get necessarily 2 barriers, or multiple barriers with a cooldown. So yeah. And then you'll be using this icy veil. Your barrier has a 15% chance, or 15% increased duration, so it can go up to, I believe, I don't want to throw out a number. So it's 6 seconds, so top of my head, maybe get to 8 seconds. And I think there's another one that you can, yeah, I think it's 8 seconds. But again, that's off the top of my head. It might just go up to 7, but I think there's other aspects and stuff that you can do to increase that duration. And this also just synergizes with this. So this is a barrier for 2 seconds. It might go up, it'll go up to 3 seconds. Or if they round up, it might go up to 4 seconds. I don't know if they actually do in Diablo 4, if they actually do the 2.7 seconds thing and they round it up, or they just actually show 2.7, or they actually stay up for 2.7 seconds but don't show it on the UI. So that one is, the game has to be fully launched, and people have to pretty much break it down and limit tests to see how that works. Inner Flames, just pyromancy skills, deal 9% increased damage. Synergizes with Inferno, synergizes with Fireball up here, so you can spam it out if you have mana up. Again, this is just a big damage. It's your ultimate. You're not using it for lucky hit chances. You're not using it for critical hits. You're just using it to put it down. You're going to be applying burn and 295% damage over 8 seconds. It's a lot. It's great. And then this Inferno pulls enemies in closer to the center, keeping them close to you so they can get hit by Inferno, over the duration of it, 8 seconds. And then you can even throw up Frost Nova if you have it up at that time, things like that. Coursing Current Hitting enemies with shock skills increase your critical strike chance by 3%. Resets upon getting a critical strike. Again, more crit strike chance. That's great, and it resets every time you get it, so it'll build up every time you don't. If every time you hit and it doesn't actually proc. Enemies deal 15% less damage for 5 seconds after being critically struck. Just makes sense. If you're getting critically strikes, if you're getting critical strikes, then you want damage reduction for 5 seconds. Just more sustainability, some more survivability. And last but not least, the mastery down here. And we read this already. So critical strikes increase this bonus by 25%. So not only do you get increased 10% damage when you're close to enemies, but you also get a 25% bonus on critical strikes that already increased damage. So I kind of went through all this stuff fast. This build, again, is just to level your character. There are other builds out there that are better at, you know, being in a party, or, you know, just trying out different elements. I prefer the Blizzard or the Frost skills, and that's the next video I'm going to be making, but I prefer it. There's not a lot of synergies between, something I've noticed is that there's not a lot of synergies between multiple elements. They kind of shoehorn you into one element, unless you have extra skills for like the build that you're making. The metas will come out as the game comes out and people develop them, but this right here is pretty much agreed upon of being the fastest solo leveling build out there. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope to see you guys in Diablo 4. If you enjoy this content, like, comment, and subscribe. I also stream on twitch.tv/AndyMills, and I will be there June 1st, 7 p.m. Central Time. I will be live if you guys want to join. Hope to see you there. If not, enjoy Diablo 4, and I'll see you guys in Sanctuary. Peace out.